Hey guys, and welcome to JavaScript practice problems for complete beginners. And in this one, we're going to be talking about a function called getInitials, which can be used for grabbing the initials of a name passed into a function. So in this example, let's say we have a string, John F. Kennedy. So if we were to go and try to get the first letter of all of these, if we were to work this out on a whiteboard, how exactly would we do it, right? So obviously one approach is we need to split based on these empty spaces, and then we need to get the first character that's a non-space. So one approach to solving this problem would be to print out the first character we find and then continuously traverse the string until we find a space, and then ready our program or system to get ready to print out the next character that it sees. So for instance, we could start at index 0. We see the first character is a J, so we go ahead and print it out. Increment to 1, to 2, to 3, to 4. We found a space, so we need to then say, okay, the next one we print out is going to be a character. So then when we hit 5, we're going to print out F, set something to false in the system or the program, and continuously increment. So then we hit 6, we're going to hit an empty space. So again, ready the system for printing out the next character. And then finally we're going to hit 7, where we print out a K. And we continuously go to the end of the string until we hit the length of whatever the string is. So that's kind of how you work it out on paper. Let's try to replicate this algorithm that we saw, but inside the computer. So now that we have a better understanding of how to implement this algorithm on a whiteboard, let's go ahead and look at how to do this in JavaScript. So to start off, let's make a function called getInitials, which takes a parameter called name, and then for now we're just going to have it return some fake initials such as JFK. And then down here we can call it with function or console.log getInitials, and then we can say John F. Kennedy will be our name, and I'll save this and I'll go ahead and run this. So notice that it's going to print out JFK because that's what we're going to return by default. So like in the example that we did on the whiteboard, what we need to do is first we need to loop through the name. So we can say for I equals 0, I less than name.length, I plus plus. And up here we can say let initials equal to a blank string. And then like we did on the whiteboard, what we need to do is every time we see a character, we can go ahead and say initials plus equals name.I. And then we need to keep track to say should add equals to true. So for instance, if we haven't seen a space yet, if we've already added and we're still waiting for a space, then we should add it only in that case. In fact, let's rename this to waiting for space. So in here I should say add it to initials if not waiting for space. And then say waiting for space equals true. And then we can say if name I is equal to a space, set waiting to space equal to false. So this is the exact implementation as what we did on the whiteboard. It's just a different way to do it in JavaScript. So now if we were to run this, we see that it prints out JFK. And that's because we didn't actually return initials. So let's change that to return initials and rerun this program. And see that it prints out capital J, capital F, capital K, because it's actually grabbing the first character of each word in this string. Now, just to demonstrate that there's multiple ways to do the same thing, I'm going to go ahead and show some helper string functions which we can use. So instead of doing this whole for loop stuff, which is pretty complicated, instead what we can do is say name.split on the strings, which is going to split our string up into different words. And then what we can do here is say split.map. And for each word we can just return the first character. And then finally we can join them using a blank string. So in fact, I could just do this. So we split the name by the spaces. We map every single word to a function where we return the first character, and then we join that array that's going to be returned by an empty string. So now if I were to run this, we see that it also prints out JFK. So just to kind of notice, there's a lot of useful functions which are attached to arrays and strings, which you should read the documentation and look up other YouTube tutorials to try to figure out how to use these. Because if you notice that this is like 5 lines of code versus that really complicated for loop, this is a much better approach. It's not as efficient potentially, but it's much better. All right, so that pretty much wraps up how to do this get initials programming practice. Let's move on to some other ones.